Okay, great. All right, and let me just see if we're waiting for anybody else. No, we are not. Okay, so we're good. All right, well, so welcome. Um, so my name is Bill Filler. I'll be facilitating. 5 minutes. I have a phone here. When the time is up, there'll be a little piano riff you might hear. If you don't hear it, or if you when you hear it, it doesn't mean you have to cut yourself off in the middle of a sentence. Finish your thought, get a last reflection, and then we'll move on. I have also this very expensive handcrafted sign that will also give you a visual cue and a reminder. The topic is, let's see, just to get back so I can say it again. There's a lot of, okay. What do you see the role of empathy in conflict transformation, peace building, and security? So what's the role of empathy, or whatever's alive? It's very important to understand that you can go off topic and that's allowed. So whatever seems to be working for you. The trick is to reflect, not respond when you're the active listener. So we're kind of conditioned to respond. So if I correct you or something, it's not a criticism of you or your ideas. It's just to keep us in the process. And okay, any questions? Okay, well, we'll just kind of go through it, and I'll be the first listener. And who would like to be the first speaker? Jonathan. Okay, great, thanks.
Um, my name is Jonathan, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've participated in a number of empathy circles, and I'm interested in how to make these more available to the public.
So your name is Jonathan, you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, and you've participated in a number of empathy circles, and you're very interested in how to make this more widely available to the public.
It teaches us patience. It teaches us to listen. Um, and one has to be very interested in it, and perhaps has to actually feel the good things about it in order to understand that it does take time.
Yeah, so it teaches us patience and listening, and that is the patience is required because it takes time to sort of get the feeling of what's happening in the circle.
And one of the challenges is the idea of making 45-minute classroom experiences for children. How do you bring the benefits of an empathy circle to a group of kids in a classroom?
Yeah, and so one thing that you've been thinking about is how do you, in 45 minutes, bring the benefits of the circles to students, kids?
Uh, there's a breakout group that meets on Thursdays called Empathy in the Schools. And Bill Fuller, our facilitator today, is the coordinator or chairman of this breakout group. And he's trying to design a game format where a teacher could bring into the schools a game and tell the kids, hey, we're going to play a game called the Empathy Circle. And how do you do it? That's the question. How do you teach a teacher to teach a game?
So you mentioned my Thursday session, empathy in schools and how to bring it in, and also the fact that I've been developing the empathy circle game. And so the question then is, how do you introduce the game or the concept of empathy or this practice to students within the confines of a school day?
And now changing subjects quickly because I think I'm running out of time.
You got about a
Uh,
minute and a half. Yeah.
Ja- James, I really want to know the name of your cat.
Well, it's my friend's cat, and
Uh,
Okay.
her full title is Little Alice, Queen of the Basement.
Okay.
And she allows me to hang out at her space, basically.
Okay. We will continue. Go ahead, Jonathan.
and I'm also want to make sure that I learn the proper pronunciation of our guest Bonfas, Bete.
Mm-hmm. So
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
you
Go ahead.
and part of the contract or the agreement, and I've been following the idea of a contract that Viola Spoling introduced. So I'm name dropping a reference. For our 90 minutes, we've come together almost as strangers, other than I know Bill, and we have an opportunity to speak what's on our mind and to think about things and think about learning to meet a new person or hear a new person speak or even for me not keeping my mind quiet while listening and reflecting on someone else.
So you were talking about the game in Viola Spolin, whose theater games is incorporated into the game. Um, and then you are remarking on the what the empathy circle does, and we come together as strangers, but during the 90 minutes, we learn, and it teaches the skills of how to, welcome people, how to interact with people, how to listen, focus on what they're saying, and to help them feel heard, which are all social. I mean, furthest social positives.
Yes, I feel fully heard.
Okay, great, thanks. All right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Bonfas, Betty,
Born first, Betty.
do you feel ready to listen?
Yes, please.
Okay,
I can give it a shout. I can
that's
give it
fine.
a try. I've never done it before, but
That's fine. And just to
yeah.
let people know, we're not about technical perfection here. We're just about, trying to do it. And we start wherever you are. And
Okay,
no problem. So,
sure.
okay. Um, all right. Well, Jonathan talked about the topic is how do you see empathy in conflict transformation, and the um, and it's my theory that empathy helps build a firm foundation for conflict, uh, for dealing with conflict. And I'll stop there.
So you're saying like your theory is that empathy builds a strong foundation to deal with conflict.
Right. And this process, as Edwin has described it, is a basic process. If people are in conflict, you might use the circles, to get people more comfortable with each other, to establish some norms about listening, but it won't solve the problem. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so the circles, you say they're very at the center of supporting ways in which people can be able to resolve conflict. And you're also saying like it's not kind of a magic bullet
Mhm.
theory approach, but it provides the space for people to kind of reflect with the conflict better and
Right.
deeply.
And basically, for thousands of years, we were conditioned to, to through conflict. We're conditioned through conflict. And so by introducing this into the schools, we can start to change the learning of children so they have a different experience of others rather than as competitors. I'll stop there.
Yeah, you're saying as human beings, we are conditioned in conflict.
Mhm.
And specifically, the reason to bring the circles in schools is that it will afford the children or the kids an opportunity to kind of put themselves in the shoes of others who are not like themselves.
Right. And so my experience is that, in the empathy doesn't mean agreement, but it does mean acknowledgement. And so that is very important emotionally to people that they are acknowledged and respected, even if you don't agree. I'll stop there.
Yeah, you believe that empathy does not mean agreement, it means acknowledgement. And that people feel respected and valued if they are acknowledged. And that is what empathy provides for them.
Right. So when I contrast my experience in the empathy circle with that model, with the model that I see in the media and on television, it's very different. And what I feel that we're not being told is that other people are not our enemies. In fact, other people are key to everyone's salvation.
When you contrast what you see, you're saying when you contrast what you see on television, on the news, with the model of empathy and the circles, you find empathy to give you a different model to life or approach to life, where you look into the stories of people that are looked at as enemies.
Yeah.
In a different way.
Yeah, and we've tested this out. We've gone to protests. We have an empathy tent, and we go to protests on both the left in our country and the right. And when I meet someone who disagrees with me politically, but I listen to them first rather than judge them or blame them, there's this great sigh of relief, and we're not labeling each other. We see each other as two human beings with areas of agreement and disagreement. And from there, you know, um, uh, we can collaborate. I'll stop there.
Okay. And you have tested it with protests.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you say. And you have tested it with the right and the left. And you have listened to people who hold different views and opinions than yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and seen the disagreements, but you have listened to them. And empathy provides the capacity to be able to humanize, to see the human in the other more than seeing the enemy or the person you're disagreeing with.
Thank you, Bonfas. I feel very heard. Now it's your turn to
Thank
be
you.
speaker. Pick a listener.
Very much welcome. Okay, so I might have to pick a listener or
Yes,
whoever
it's
wants
your
to
turn.
volunteer. Okay, so James, would you like to listen to me, or is that?
Sure. I think I'm the last man standing here, so
It's okay.
I don't think I could look to my left or right.
And and of
Divert.
course you have a cute cat, so
Mm.
hanging out there. So for me, I look at empathy as what brings me to peace building work and conflict transformation work is my own lived experience as an artist and peace builder. And being an artist, especially a theater artist, has afforded me great opportunities. I'll stop there first.
Uh, well, first I have to make a disclosure that
Yeah.
I was not expecting actually to be in a empathy circle. I thought I was signing up initially here for a seminar or something on the practices and principles here. So having to shake my memory cells into immediate action is might be a challenge. But fortunately, you spoke few words at initially here, and I think you're introducing yourself as an artist, and that you find it, I guess, challenging in some ways to deal with circumstances where empathy is needed, and you're wanting to search that out further.
Yes.
I'm
That's
basically doing the same thing, and I guess we'll go from there.
wow. Thank you so much, Adam. I think that's exactly what I said. And thing is, as an artist doing peace building work or conflict transformation work, you come face to face with empathy because you play the stories of our enemies.
I'm
through
sorry, I
art.
didn't catch that last.
Okay.
You're
I was
sounding a
just
little, to me, you're coming through kind of like you're in a tunnel or something. So it's
okay.
a little difficult for me to catch everything.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So I was just about to say, especially as a theater artist, I have the privilege, as a theater artist and as a peace builder, I have the privilege to play the stories of my enemies.
To play the story?
Of my enemies, like of the people that are like enemies.
I see. Okay. To act in the enemy's part, and you put that on stage?
Yes,
Yeah, all right.
totally. And also to experiment with different outcomes of that acting and storytelling of enemy stories.
Well, that's an interesting concept.
Okay, so just try to reflect what he said.
Yeah.
And then you can respond when it's your turn to speak.
Okay. Will if I caught you correctly here, you through an empathetic mode, you portray the experience and thoughts of the enemy on stage, and try different, as you say, outcomes to see how that plays out.
Yes, yes. I want to say thank you very much for honoring my sharing, James. I will
Well,
have to end it there.
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, James, it's your turn to speak. Choose a speaker, and we try to get everybody involved, but the math is not always perfect, so don't worry. So just go where you want to go.
Well, like I say, this is
Pick a listener, though. Pick a listener. So
well, Jonathan, yeah.
Okay.
Empathy in relation to conflict transformation. I have a probably an unnecessarily complex understanding of what that means. I have a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution from George Mason University, and I've written a book recently that entails much of many of the practices and experiences that are being addressed by empathy and conflict transformation.
So when coming into this environment of the empathy circle, you say that your perspective it comes from your academic affiliations, and that you have a advanced degree that relates to the area of empathy. And you also say that you've recently written and published a book on this conflict resolution. And go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, to clarify, my practical experiences in peacekeeping operations as a civil affairs officer. I'm retired from that now. I did that for many years, and then I worked on the conflict analysis and resolution concepts, merging my conceptual work and that of others in terms of peacekeeping operations, and now I'm interested in this idea of empathy being a particular focus in the general population. So that's why I'm here today.
So I hear you saying that you had a career of civil affairs in civil affairs, and you it was a broad it was of a broad scope and used many other tools than empathy. But now you have an active interest in focusing in a bit to see how empathy could be used in your field.
Yes, yes. I'm aware of the I appreciate deeply the idea of being sympathetic or empathetic and understanding where people are coming from, and that different perspectives need to be heard in a given time.
It's been your experience that people need to be heard, and it's been your experience that you have benefited from understanding people's situation, and you're balancing the terms empathy and sympathy, trying to feel exactly what you mean by getting to know a person, or to how knowing a person improves a situational conflict.
Yeah, yes. To be able to understand the dynamics, the social and relationship dynamics that's occurring in a conflict context. And I separate that between conflict transformation into structural elements and into relationship elements.
Taking an academic approach, you've identified structural, or what I would call global concerns, as distinguished from personal and littler, smaller concerns. And in your dealing with conflict resolution, you've found that understanding how the community or the global or the larger concerns, structural concerns or systemic concerns, influence hindrance to conflict resolution.
Well put. Couldn't have said better myself. So, yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Well, thank you.
You heard me. You definitely heard me.
Okay. So I guess Boniface, would you be my active listener?
Yes, for sure.
I think I had a wonderful childhood. However, my mother got sick when I was in the approximately 11th grade. And this was about the same time that I was doing, I was an electronics guy. And somehow I started hanging around drama people. And somehow I got drafted to do the lighting for a play. And I never took a drama class. But nevertheless, I found myself hanging out with drama kids because I could wire the lights.
Yeah. Yeah, you're saying you had quite good childhood until something difficult happened, tragic happened. Your mother became sick when you were in 11th grade. And though you never participated a lot in drama, but you got drafted in it and also got involved in, you started to do that work by creating the lighting for them.
Yes, you understood me. And so my drama class kind of became my family. My father ended up spending 100% of his time taking care of my mother, and I don't blame him. So I found a family in my theater class and with my theater, my actors, the actors that were in it. And this followed me from high school into college, where I did the lighting. And there's a little niche. There's a little niche for technical people around artists who are who want to act.
So this followed you even though the sickness of your mother became something that took away your father's attention because he needed to help her, because this was very, very like a matter of life and death, and you found very good kind of friendship and family during these moments with the drama people, and you became all of you became so close knit as a family with these people, and eventually they really found use of your skills as a technical person.
Yes, and I've been involved on and off with drama, both as a volunteer in community theater, and I had an opportunity to have a Shakespeare company, and I've produced a few hundred plays. And I segueing into what I really want to talk about today. I do have a YouTube channel which I've posted a number of the plays we've recorded. But today I wanted to talk a bit about Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and how different what we're experiencing is other than those media. Each of us is going to get to talk about whatever is on our mind. And I guess what I want to say is actually I'm supposed to stop and you're supposed to reflect. I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so you spent a lot of time working on community drama and produced almost 120 plays, Shakespearean plays, and you have segued into looking at the role of social media, basically. And that's what you have been looking at recently.
I guess it's the same concern I brought up before. After we're spending time together, Boniface, I'm hearing you, and I'm listening to you reflect, and I'm keenly aware of what a wonderful person you are, because I feel connected just in these few minutes.
Yeah, so you are connecting with me, and you have a discernible mind to be able to connect at a deeper level than just what you're seeing, even in this moment. So, yeah.
Yes, I feel you've reflected me. Thank you.
You're very much welcome.
Okay, Bonfas, it's your turn to be speaker. Just to let you know, if sometimes people feel pressure to come up with content, and so you can pass. There's no forcing in an empathy circle, and
Yeah,
so you can pass, or you can sit in silence, and we'll sit in silence with you for a while. So whatever
yeah,
you choose, and pick your listener. And
yeah. So, how about Jonathan? You wanna be my listener kindly?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so how so I started to be uh, a theater maker before I was a peace builder. And this happened because of my own life, my childhood. I had spent time being street connected in Nairobi, and theater was actually used to engage me as a young person, and became a kind of like a process to remove me from being street connected and reintegrate me back to the community. I'll stop there.
So, so, so there are two elements with you today. There's the element of an artist performing in the theater, and then we also have the element of a peacemaker, peace builder. And you're saying that it started out for you in theater, and that the theater as a child helped you integrate into the community, and it helped you uplift you, and it did much for you, and it was only later in life that you've integrated, or you're trying to put together the pieces of how to use theater in peace building.
Perfect, correct. And the other thing is, so eventually I became a peace builder because theater helped me to see conflict in a very different way, but also to see empathy. Because theater helped me actually to see empathy.
So you're saying that the theater was transformative, or changed you, because it allowed you to look at conflict and violence differently than before. It gave you a new insight, and it also helped you become more empathetic and to start exploring empathy.
Yeah. And also, so then I went to school to study peace and conflict studies, because initially I used my theater when I moved from being street connected, went to an institution, and then eventually was able to go to school. I went to study, my first degree was in theater and communications. And eventually I started to do a lot of volunteer work in Kenya during post-election violence?
So you're saying that you felt fortunate because you were able to get your first degree in theater and communications, and you felt very good about that. And then you went on to do additional studies in conflict resolution. So you're saying that you have an academic background uh, in these areas, uh, and that's about as much as I remember. So
Yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
And finally, actually, I got an opportunity to go and study, to go to graduate school in Canada to do my master's in peace and conflict studies at the University of Manitoba. So, and I came
And
back
so
home to do this work.
so you say you were very fortunate and went on to get a master's in conflict resolution studies. I hope that's close.
Yeah,
From the University of Manitoba
yeah,
in
Manitoba.
Manitoba.
It's in Canada. Yeah,
Yeah. And then you went back to Kenya.
yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. That is like spot on. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
So I guess these smaller groups are nice. So I'm gonna, James, would you like to reflect me?
At your risk, I'll give it another shot. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I just am intrigued by observing the process, and I find it helpful to hear each conversation repeated twice.
At least twice. Yes, that works. That works for me. You like to hear it repeated twice about the process.
Well, I have
I mean,
found that
yeah, I didn't say that quite right, but I know what you said.
we have it's just fascinating that a simple contract to play game, let's pretend like we're playing a game and we're all sitting here together and we all agree to some simple rules, and we have a facilitator to make sure that the rules are followed. But what happens is it's changing us. It's moving away from uh, I don't do Twitter. I think I did one or two tweets 10 years ago, hopefully on an account that's long gone, from an email from a job that's long gone.
Um, Are we allowed to take notes in this?
Yes. Yeah, whatever you do.
Okay.
You're also allowed to interrupt me and say, "Hold on, you're going too quick."
I'm having to double clutch on my memory here and push ahead here. So anyway, you actually did kind of repeat yourself, uh, or you actually demonstrated that process of repeating the process, as you put it, and that in that process, it's actually changing us. By that, I think you mean the speakers, the people engaged in this listening and speaking, and that it's if I caught it correctly, perhaps more useful and effective than doing Twitter, maybe, or some social media that I think you were saying was not so useful.
You got the gist of what I was saying. Thank you. Um, I'm saying that this is totally different than Twitter or Facebook. because it seems like on Facebook and Twitter, people are going for a reaction. They're reactive.
You're saying that it's different than that the empathy circle process is different than Twitter, in that, well, I think I would need to ask for clarification, but that it's a more, Twitter is more reactive, and this process is more engaging, I guess.
Close. It's reflective. I have to become, in order for me to listen, I have to become you for a moment so that I can hear what you're saying in the words and become you and then reflect you, and then you validate whether I got it or not. And for that moment, we're like the same person.
Well, that the process you find is reflective. You're able to reflect what you believe is coming from the other person, and that that's the value beyond simply reacting.
Yes, I currently find myself supervising as a for job. I'm supervising some caregivers, and it works in my interactions with them. It's much easier for me to start off the process by listening to them. And these classes and these empathy circles have made me very conscious of how powerful listening to someone is.
Well, you found that listening, this experience of active listening, in communication with the caregivers that you're supervising, allows you to, well, it's a powerful mechanism for understanding them and them understanding you and engaging.
Yes, I feel heard.
We're both
Thank
lucky.
you.
All right. Yeah, this.
So James, your turn to
Yeah.
take a listening.
Well, how about you?
That's fine. Sure. Yeah. Facilitators are always involved. And that's one of the other aspects of the circle that's egalitarian.
Okay. Well, in the many years I was working in peacekeeping operations, well, peacekeeping as a term being used loosely, I always had interpreters. This was in East and Central Africa and North Africa, the Balkans, Afghanistan, different places, different times. And I always had good interpreters, which maybe allowed my memory practice to entropy a little bit. So this is a valuable skill that you're advocating.
So, as in you refer to peace speaker broadly in broad terms, but you were in Africa, Central Africa, South Africa, I guess, Northern Africa, and the Balkans, Afghanistan, other places, and you always had interpreters, and they were very good interpreters. So that really helped you in as far as effective communication is concerned, and then you're seeing how the reliance on interpreters may have affected your ability to, recall or listen, and now you're seeing, that this is a good skill to have.
Very good. Yeah, I think, uh, active listening is not easy, uh, just based on my own experience, because when people are saying something, sometimes I'm thinking of my own experiences and not really listening to what they're saying. So, uh, for that reason alone, interpreters are handy.
Yeah. So you're saying that, active listening is not easy. And so therefore, you really were relying on the interpreters a great deal to help you understand and also communicate what you wanted to communicate to the people that you were working with.
Yeah. And I find that this, the empathy circle, to my sort of hard bitten field guy experience, is a little kind of touchy feely, the circle bit.
Mhm.
And I would probably find it more approachable with a more generic term, or something that doesn't involve a really personal kind of expectation. Uh,
Yeah, so you were talking about your kind of reaction to the empathy circle, and that this process is, you said, probably a little bit touchy feely, or too touchy feely, or at least at first blush seems that way, and that you would prefer kind of more, you know. Like a listening circle might be another way or listening or reflective listening might be more sparse and accurate for you. So you're kind of, I sense, struggling, not struggling, but you have some ambivalent feelings about that.
yeah, and it's not so much about the experience; it's about the term
Right.
empathy circle. That's a little too personal. It's kind of, but the intent I fully appreciate, and I know that I have full conviction that it's needed in terms of interaction and dialogue.
Yeah. So you wish to separate the kind of term empathy circle from the actual intent of what we're trying to do here. The empathy circle, maybe not the best way to frame it for you, but the intent is something that you truly see the benefit of.
Yes, yeah. Um, yeah, what I see as a critical piece missing generally in peace and stabilization operations, to use a more updated term,
Hmm.
um, is the lack of genuine dialogue. It's almost always negotiation or mediation that's position based and demand based, and there's no real dialogue occurring. And this empathy engagement,
Hmm.
uh, I see as something that can get at that dialogue process, uh, and be more approachable in that regard.
Yeah. So you were talking about in your experience in trying to deal with conflicts all over the world, it involved negotiations, which were basically based on what would you say, kind of hard, needs, wants, positions, things like that. And what you found different or lacking is the need for real dialogue. And so that you find that this process, although you said empathy engagement is a better term for you, leads to that sort of dialogue.
Yeah, maybe a term for me would be genuine engagement,
Yeah.
something
So,
like that.
yeah. So you would say genuine engagement
Yeah,
as
yeah. Um, so I guess that's enough for me right now.
sure. Okay. So you feel for her. Okay. All right, Jonathan.
Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that Bonfus had to put his children. It's 10 o'clock in Africa, Nairobi, and so he had to put his children to sleep. So that's why he left. Um, so yeah, so it's interesting that James brought that up because, especially in other cultures, empathy is seen as quote unquote feminine, and so therefore is not readily accepted. If a male in some cultures takes part in an empathy circle, they're seen as effeminate. I'll stop there.
Um, so you're opening up the topic of different cultures having different norms, uh, and specifically that empathy in some cultures is stigmatized as being weak or feminine. And because of these cultures, traditions, and religions, this might be off-putting in their societies.
Yeah. And I also see empathy, in other words, kind of, and to react to James's, as being a bit too woo woo. And, and so people are, saying, oh, it's empathy, and there's this sort of sell, it's everything to every people, all people. But it's really not. It's about taking the time, which is skill, focus, um, to really listen and try to understand what someone else is feeling.
Uh, yeah, you're dismissing the naysayers. You're saying it's really about taking the time to understand someone.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm not necessarily dismissing the naysayers because but I understand that perspective. Um, there's a difference between, and I think this is the critical factor we're doing here. There's a difference between an intellectual understanding and an emotional experience. I'll stop there.
You've you find it helpful to create a distinction between emotional understanding of empathy and intellectual understanding of empathy.
Right. And while I love intellectual discussions and things like that, I was watching a television program and there was a professor from Stanford, and they were talking about the professors who were professors of morality and ethics and things like that. I'll stop there.
So you were going to share with us what a professor from Stanford had to say on ethics and morality.
Right. And he cited these studies, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the professor who did the studies, but they investigated these experts as to how often did they call their mothers, how often did they actually practice these ethics and things. And the studies found that these experts were slightly less moral and ethical than the general public.
So you're saying that they presented this story that they were doing background research or investigations on, I guess, a number of public speakers who speak on the topics of ethics and morals. And somehow the study, they discovered that they didn't live up to the average, and they weren't as ethical and moral as they as their public face.
Right. Which is not something against intellectualism or an intellectual understanding, but it tells me that it needs to be leavened with experience.
So you're saying that that all the intellectualism in classes and studies and philosophical theories that we can adopt still need to be leavened or improved by a practical experience.
Right. And this is an experience that we experience throughout our lives. Babies, one of the ways that you engender language development is you mimic their sort of babbling. And so there's obviously there's no, grammar, content, things like that, but it's speak response. And that response actually has an emotional meaning to the baby. Hey, I'm important. Somebody is listening to me. And then I'm done.
You're making the observation that humans are multi-channeled, and that in dealing with even with babies during their learning or their learning period, they can, even though they're babbling, don't have syntactic or semantic content. You're saying that there is an emotional underlying content which is communicated and important for foundational development of the human being.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I feel fully heard.
Well, you're welcome. Bill, would you like to reflect
Sure.
me?
Uh-huh.
Well, I can't imagine a job as a conflict mediator, considering I do follow the news, just following what's going on in the Ukraine and all of the displaced people and all of the tremendous drama going on. I'm not going to say drama, how about tragedy going on? It's just overwhelming.
So you're thinking about how difficult it would be to be a conflict mediator, and especially giving an example, the context of Ukraine, where there's real tragedy going on.
Well, tragedies going on everywhere. It's all tragic. It's just this is such a visceral and grassroots, and so it's how would you bring together one of the things that Bill and I have talked about is scaling. Notice how we took in a group of today 30 people maybe, and now we split off into 4, and due to timing we lost 1.
Mhm.
But what's going on in the other groups, and how do you infuse an ideology or a hidden agenda or a goal more specific than how do we build a culture of empathy, or what was our what do you see as the role of empathy in conflict transformation, peace building, and security? It's like what have we done other than shared with a wonderful. Now, I wrote the man's name down and it disappeared, but we have it recorded. We make friends. Bonafide.
Right.
We make friends, but how do we walk out of here and transform the world?
So you were talking about, first of all, not tragedy, not just occurring in Ukraine, but it's widespread. It's a human condition. And then we talked about conversations we had about scaling this particular experience. And then you talked about the quality of like, well, this is what's happening in this circle where we're kind of meeting people and we meet, people who are, really nice and enrich us by their presence and share with us. But what's going on in the other circles? And so how do you then get this sort of, uh, let's say, the goal, the unstated goal, or something like hidden agenda, or things like that, and how do you communicate and spread that?
Yeah, I feel understood. Uh, I've run out of something to say, so I'm gonna defer, Bill, to you to start talking.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll talk to James, and just to let you know, it's about 11:16 here, And I think we'll be going back in about 15 minutes. So just to let you know where our time is. All right. So, um, all right, James. So yeah, living in the San Francisco Bay Area, um, I've come up against my share of gurus and things like that. People who are sort of trying to sell you something, but that the real message is to become a quote unquote acolyte. I'll stop there.
Uh, you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and you're well acquainted with uh, people who are, I think your term was, are engaged in woo-woo,
Mm,
could be interpreted as that, and that maybe trying to sell you something and make acolytes and that sort of thing.
right. And so it's been really, my personal mission um, to not oversell the empathy circle. I believe it's a transformative. I believe very strongly that it's an excellent tool. But like any tool, sometimes you use it, and sometimes you don't. I'll stop there.
I appreciate the stopping
Sure.
with efficiency. Yeah. Um, yeah, uh, you understand the uh, complication of, uh, let's say, commercial use of uh, some kinds of empathy engagements that are more, well, to use the term, my term,
Mhm.
commercial, and that you sense the need not to oversell it, not to overdo it, and undermine the original intent of genuine
Mhm.
empathetic engagement.
Yeah. And I guess in relation to our two careers, I was a special education teacher for about 40 years, dealing with kids who were in danger of being hospitalized or going to prison or going on a residential uh, treatment program. Um, and my job was to try to keep them integrated in their families and, the school. I'll stop there.
Uh, uh, you've been involved for many years, 40 years,
Mhm.
in special education with kids, and uh, in an effort to help them stay in a normalized situation, stay with their families, and in school.
Right. So my job then was to trade. When they got to me, it was an intensive program. So they had failed in 3 or 4 places. And so generally they were conditioned to try to push you away. They were going to get the same kind of reaction that they had gotten wherever other places in their life. And my job was to make them feel heard and respected so that we could then engage. I'll stop there.
Okay. I understand that uh, your job was to help these kids who had come from intense experiences for long periods of time, and to help them feel heard, uh, and to be able to engage.
Yeah. And so consequently, they were conditioned. Some of them were very violent. And one of the great learnings that I made was that, a child might impulsively punch or throw a book or something like that. And that we would certainly maintain safety. But then what we would do is we would meet up and we would say, what is the communicative intent of that act? I'll stop there.
I'm cheating by writing.
That's fine. That's
Uh, that, well, you're saying that some of the kids um, were acting out through violence,
Mhm.
and I suppose in a kind of frustration uh, frustrated response, and that you were helping them by helping them understand what themselves and express to you what they're trying to say, what their intent is in this acting out like that.
Exactly. And when we could find out, like for instance, it could be that they didn't get fed last night or they saw a violent act. But when we found that out, and then we could address it effectively, like if they were hungry, we gave them food. And it wasn't just saying, "Oh, I hear that you're hungry," and leaving it at that. No, you have to have the food, and addressed it though. Then the violence went down a great deal.
Mm,
And now I'm done. Thanks.
okay. Now, you found that if you were able to elicit from them what was underneath that acting out, whether it was lack of food or witnessing violence or experiencing violence, then you were able to get at the underlying cause and bring that to light, and that was helpful.
Thanks. I feel fully heard, James.
Thank you. So what happens now?
So it's your turn to speak. We have
Okay.
about 8 minutes till I think we'd come back. I haven't seen Edwin's thing, so
Okay.
Would you like to us all agree to go into a more informal recap mode?
yeah, we can do a debrief in here if you'd like. A little short debrief, depending.
Fine with me.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess a debrief is essentially a conversation without the repeating.
Right. About the experience, yes. Yeah. And I'll get some demerits because I'm not keeping in the circle process, but that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
The enforcement arm of the empathy circle is not robust.
well, you might get some agitation if it was, Okay. Well, let me just say what's motivating me to
Mhm,
understand what this empathy
mhm,
circle uh, I guess initiative is about. I understand the value of it, no question, and I understand and I appreciate and support the idea, the intent.
mhm,
Um, I still have this little thing about the circle idea, but I think the process itself it takes a little getting used to. It's not a discussion or a conversation. That it's interrupted. That process is interrupted by the repeating,
mhm,
which is more, I'm guessing, more of a therapy practice. In therapy, the
mhm,
therapist will repeat. And that psychologists do that. They're trained to do that. Um, and But it's a big missing piece in international and I assume societal level and community level um, interactions, dialogues, discussions. Um, Without it, there's just a lot of hollering and frustration, and if not um, inducement for further violence when the meeting is over.
mhm,
So what I'm doing is with this book that I've written, and basically what I'm about is taking the observations I have from the field, the experiences, and put it together with the conceptual work and adding some thoughts about what I see going on in this country, and all of that based on the book and my hope is to get that information back out to the field and back into the public arena, the public just dialogue process. So this is very beneficial for me, for my understanding of how, a better understanding of how empathy is core to conflict resolution and conflict transformation. It helps address that relationship part, as opposed to just the agreements and the political settlements and such.
James, have you published, or is this in pre-production?
No, it was published a year ago. My author website is analyticreflections.org, and that explains what the book is about. The title is Analytic Reflections from Conflict Zones, a cautionary tale for a polarizing America and world. And the patterns I see going on in this country and elsewhere are very troubling. I've seen these things before. And so I'm raising that caution. And what I'm doing now is preparing to go on a speaking tour, book tour, speaking engagements, and talk about these things.
Okay, you're going to have to slow down. I'm having trouble pulling it up. Analytic Reflections.
.org.
Oh, you're giving me a direct URL.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a nice, interesting ORG.
Yeah, well, to get to the root of this also, this is based on Carl Rogers' reflective listening, active listening you've heard. And out of it, NVC has grown, and Marshall Rosenberg, and a few other things. But the difference is that there's no hierarchical relationship between, like, the therapist and client, so to speak. And that's different. So if you wanted to use the word like, reflective listening or something like that, again, our enforcement arm is not very robust. But that's fine. The idea is the experience, and to give people the experience of what we're having here, and how you name it is not as important.
Yeah. Well, the sort of encapsulating this under my understanding of the need for this empathy engagement. When I not too long after I got to Kosovo, I was participating in a meeting with the military contingent commander there, with Serbians and Albanians, refugees who had just returned to a town. And they were having quite a bit of difficulty being able to interact with each other and get the business of normalizing life again after the war, and reconstruction and all of that, resurrecting governance, and the normal infrastructure needs that a town has. And so as the meeting was getting going, the Serbs and Albanians were really getting heated. And the colonel who was facilitating, the peacekeeper colonel facilitating the meeting, put his fist down on the table and said, "There will be nothing controversial said at this meeting. Nothing controversial said here." So in effect, what that did was stop any possibility of really of the conflict parties really engaging each other in a meaningful manner, and it just put a cold war on the town
Hmm.
where all of the dynamics, ingredients precipitating the hostilities was still there boiling, and they were frustrated further by not being able to engage each other in a useful civil manner and in any productive manner.
Hmm.
So this empathy circle, to use the term,
Hmm.
is a dynamic I see that can be captured and made to work in such engagements where there's heated hostilities and difficulty in communicating, and uh, and this is a way to get beyond that, to get past that, to break through that somehow, at least in the local meeting level. In terms of big conferences um, and political settlements, that's a different matter.
Yeah. So what we do in a very heated situations, because we have used the process in conflict resolution, is that a person or a facilitator will meet with one group if they're not ready to dialogue with each other. We'll meet with one group, demonstrate the reflective listening, establish a relationship where they feel heard, meet with the other, do the same thing, and then with that shared context, bring the two sides together to listen to each other, and say, hey, you don't have to solve everything today. Just listen to each other, understand each other, and then we'll have follow-up meetings. So you kind of take space and deconstruct things a little bit first, and get people to trust the process.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Jonathan, well, how you doing, Jonathan? Anything else to add here?
I I'm just overwhelmed, to be honest with you. It's such a challenge. When do we have time in our life just to sit here and take a deep breath?
Hmm.
And I'm just thinking, um, about uh, what structures do you put in place um, to enhance or to build people taking the time to listen to each other? It just seems like a uphill battle. Everybody's tethered to their iPhone or Android now, and it's kind of fortunately it passed me by. I'm tethered to my computer, but I'm not tethered to an iPhone. Um, so I found the book on the website. I see you don't have a Kindle version yet,
Not yet, no.
and it's a nice analytical reflections. It's a nice uh, website name.
Yeah. Well, I had uh, my my original working titles were things like war is um, uh, yeah, war is the road rage of how did I put it? War is the road rage of humanity, and other titles. Uh, but my publisher is an academic, normally an academic publisher, and my generally my whole approach to the subject is um, an anomaly for scholarly works. But they accepted the analytic reflections from conflict zones, but there's quite a bit in the book that is off the reservation, if you will. So I appreciate that they did go ahead and publish it and support it.
That isn't you standing in the picture on the cover page, is it?
No, that's a Spanish peacekeeper in Mostar, Bosnia. But that's in terms of the caution that I'm talking about. My caution is you don't want to go there where that guy is standing. You don't want to be in that situation. And so you need to think about what it takes to stay out of that and have better ways for people to engage each other, for societies and those in any kind of conflict circumstance. So there are some what's going on in this country in terms of the dysfunctional national discourse. I address that quite a bit in the book, and what your group is doing, I think, is a very good effort and initiative to try to get at interrupting that trend to the dysfunctionality and the polarization, the extremism that is being given. It's getting too much headway. So,
well, people find it hard to find time to take the time to expand their beyond their comfort zone. And
yeah, well, I'm noticing that in this little process. This isn't my usual inclination to get this, I don't know, personal or open, the circle thing. I can't, it's hard for me to engage the circle. But the process, I appreciate completely.
I initially had similar reservations, but as time went on, I found it almost becomes a self-selection, and you either have to embrace humanity with all of its flaws and learn to not be impatient and to just accept people. I'll say it again, with all their flaws. It's not like a power business meeting where there's $1 billion on the table. It's so subtle, and you almost need. There's a wonderful. I took a training course to become a facilitator. I didn't tack the ECF on my moniker today, but we went as part of the facilitator training. They have people who deliberately interrupt the process. In other words, they and I heard over and over again, and it's so true, to stick to the process. Everyone comes in with a different agenda, even though a theme is suggested. Bill and I Bill does a empathy in schools empathy circle, and so the focus is more towards how are we going to get this into the schools. But this issue of where we get into the woo-woo is that many people can't begin to become altruistic and giving to the community without solving some of their own interpersonal problems. And even though we may be off agenda and we're not going to make our deadlines, and there's no looming accountability, Bill's making jokes about our management team. Yeah, because we don't have one. This is in a way a very distributed process, which brings me back to some of the themes I'm planning on talking about over the next few months, which is distributed communication systems as alternatives to Twitter. It's Twitter and Facebook have had a tremendous influence on polarizing the world.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop there.
I think, I mean, I understand it. My impression is that Twitter and Facebook are doing just that, but also almost to an equal measure, maybe not quite as much. Getting people engaging that never would have otherwise. And, you know, for example, this conflict, security, peace building, whatever it is on
Right.
on LinkedIn. That's engaging a lot of people. I mean, I'm engaging people that I never would have otherwise,
Mhm.
and a much broader engagement at different levels with different groups that wasn't happening before. So there is to me, a very positive aspect of Twitter and Facebook, but at the same time, you know, anything can be used for good or ill.
Mm.
And that's the trick, is understanding that and how do you deal with it.
James, great to meet you.
Well, likewise, nice to meet you fellows.
Yeah. Great to be in a circle with you guys. I learned a lot, James. Thank you very much. And people have said that, but thank you for your work. It's a
Yeah.
cliche, but I know it must not be easy.
Yeah, well, thank you for
That's good. Happy, happy, happy.
Welcome back, everybody.